You know, sometimes the greatest history can be hidden in plain sight. Like, for example, look at how old these steps are. No telling how old they actually are. But in a way, at least for a while there, it seemed as though they went to nowhere. What's up, you guys? Chet the Dream Poet here, coming to you all with another fun-filled historical vlog here in my hometown of Cleveland, Tennessee. Now, as you all can tell, it's very much an overcastish, is that even a word? An overcastish day here in Cleveland. But today, guys, we are going to talk about something that is not so well known here in my hometown. And that is the famous Civil War tunnels of Cleveland, Tennessee. You see, this tunnel system was believed to be a part of the Underground Railroad, or it is often considered to be an escape route for one of the state's wealthiest men during the Civil War. And that man's name was Julius Roth. You see, Julius Roth, he was a German immigrant. He came to this country in the 1840s, I believe, and he owned and operated many of the copper mines in Ducktown and Copper Hill, Tennessee, which are about 30 miles to the north, well, actually, pardon me, to the east of Cleveland. And now, Julius Roth, his home was here in Cleveland. Some say his home had 2,000 acres that accompanied it. Now, we are going to this house because this is allegedly where the entrance of the Civil War tunnels of Cleveland, Tennessee start. So let's do it. Anchor down. You see, it is in this very unassuming house right here that is now privately owned. You see, this house was built in 1861 by Thomas Callaway, and not long after that, Julius Roth purchased the house. And now, as I was saying, the house sat on about 2,000 acres, but it is believed that the beginning of the Civil War tunnels started with this building. However, those claims are refuted. Some people don't really know, but the claims are often directed at this house. However, many do come to the conclusion that at some point the original entrance to the tunnels were walled off. Now, to talk a little bit more history about Julius Roth, you see, he also owned a copper rolling mill here in Cleveland. But when the Confederacy took over at the beginning of the war, well, the Confederacy took over Julius Roth's copper mines. And you see, for a short time, Julius Roth, he attempted to work and operate the mines even under Confederate control. But it came to a point that he had to leave Tennessee. You see, Julius Roth, he moved back to his home state in Cincinnati. And from there, he waited out the rest of the Civil War. You see, why he tried to operate it and run it for as long as he did was because he was trying to protect the best interests of investors in New York and in Louisiana. However, this failed. But after the Civil War, he did come back to Cleveland, and he did come back to this house where he lived out the rest of his life. And actually, he made way more money because in that time he had taken smelting operations, efficiencies, advice from his brothers, and he took it and he used it at the copper mines in Copper Hill and Ducktown. However, due to copper shortages, the declining price of copper, those mines actually closed for a very brief time in 1887. But now that we've talked about this beautiful old house, we are going to go to point B, where these Civil War tunnels lay. So let's do it. Now, not far from here, you can see that the house is just up on the hill. You can also see some old steps and what looked to be at one point a parking lot. However, times change. You see, the building of interest right now is that building right there with the blackish red tint to it. You see, this is where point A was for the Civil War tunnels here in Cleveland. Point B led to the train station just right across the street. So as of right now, the tunnels are directly beneath our feet. However, others believe that the tunnels go on much further than this. But we'll discuss that here in a moment. So let's go over to the train station, shall we? This is the train depot. Now, this train depot was constructed in 1909, about 50 years after the Civil War, but the train depot that stood there before it, well, you can say that during the Civil War in 1863, Union troops would take over Cleveland, and they would also take over this train depot. You see, Abraham Lincoln, in a letter to one of his generals, he said that capturing Cleveland, Tennessee was just as important as capturing Richmond, Virginia. Now, the reason for this is because Cleveland, Tennessee was a railroad town. And if the Union controlled Cleveland, Tennessee, they could control what was going in and out of Chattanooga, which was a primary battleground, perhaps one of the bloodiest areas in the Civil War, like the Battle of Chickamauga, the second bloodiest battle in the Civil War. I find it interesting as well that much of the train depot's original brick is still on the ground. It's pretty fascinating. Now, personal transportation will end sometime in the 1930s. This train track will be used for the transportation of goods, cargo, everything into the lower parts of the South. Somehow, in some way, I think this cargo stool or this deck has to be from the early 1900s. I do not believe that it is from the Civil War, because honestly I don't think the boards could last that long. You often gotta wonder where that railroad track once went. Or maybe this was just where they unloaded, or pardon me, loaded cargo. And much like the transportation of passengers ending in the 1930s, this train depot would suffer the same fate. You see, it would wall off and close its doors, and it would remain empty and in complete disrepair until 2012, when it was renovated and got a second chance at life. And it is now a transportation service for Sethra buses here in Cleveland. And this is where the history of the Civil War tunnels become interesting. You see, as the years progress and Cleveland, Tennessee grows into a thriving town, a thriving city, the stories of the Civil War tunnels will disappear and mesh between urban legend and truth. You see, in 2011, there was an opening discovered just behind the Fire and Rescue Center here in downtown Cleveland. And these men, they descended into this hole and they found the Civil War tunnels that had been lost. As I mentioned, I talked about how people here in Cleveland believe the tunnels go throughout the city and they expand. And that is because not far from here, at the old Hardwick woolen mill, beneath its structure, there's a tunnel system. Some people believe this to be a drainage system, but some believe that this is just another extension of the tunnels. So now we're going to descend into what I believe is a part of that tunnel system. Okay guys, it is beneath here that it is believed that a portion of the Civil War tunnels still exist and are still accessible. Well, now for me, I don't recommend that anyone do this. This is rather dangerous, so be forewarned, don't do this at home. I'm doing it for historical documentation. So, let's take a little trip, shall we? It's very interesting to see how old this actually is. Now, the Hardwick woolen mill was constructed in the 1880s, but some believe that the tunnels, or I should say the mill, was built right on top of the tunnels, which makes you kind of wonder the size of that spider. The old brick, old stone, so it does make you wonder if this is original and this is what began the foundation of the mill. I don't necessarily know, you guys, but it is an interesting thought. I remember I came back here sometime, well, many years ago, but it's been so long since then. And it does appear that one way goes that way, and another goes that way. But if you look up there, that is where it is believed to be a portion of the tunnels. And as you can tell, it is not necessarily meant for people like me. I'm kind of fat, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Hey guys, this is where it is believed to be it, because it breaks off in such an interesting way. But now, as I was saying, go take a rest real quick, that all of this, way back in 2011, my friends and I, we decided to take a trip down here. And now, well, when we got out, when we were brushing ourselves off, my best friend says that he sees something at the end of the tunnel. Now, it looks like some kind of light. It does not look like the other end of the tunnel where the streets were. No, it looked just like a lantern light, just piercing. And now my friend sensed that way back in the early 1900s, two men got into a fight. They came down into this tunnel, and, well, only one came out, which you can only guess what happened and why. It's very, very tight through here. But this is, again, where it is believed to be a portion of the Civil War tunnels that seems to go back forever and ever and ever. Plus, it's not easy to move around when you're kind of fat, but it does appear that there is some kind of light. I think it's time for us to head out. Well, after doing some walking, I do believe I'm covered in water. And by the way, there's a drainage dip right there. That's really nice. But you guys, that was it. That was incredible. However, I'm a little bit tired now. Let me see if I can't shut this off properly to believe I got it. But anyway, you guys, those were the Civil War tunnels in my hometown of Cleveland, Tennessee. As you can see, the weather has been overcast, sunny, overcast, sunny. It's like the weather up here can't make its mind. But it's all good. But anyway, you guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. It always means a lot. Always goes to show that y'all care, that y'all want to see more content. Thank you all very much. But anyway, love y'all. Vlog over.